Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month, it's the start of a new year when everyone is listening to this. And a lot of times with New Year's, we have new goals. And sometimes we like to start a new chapter. Today, we have a new guest. Her name is Dr. Nicole Bradford. I want to say thank you for joining us and sharing your insight. We're going to speak a little bit deeper on this idea of, we have all these New Year's resolutions at this point, and usually it can be discouraging when they start fizzling out in March. But thank you again for coming on and sharing your insight with us today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. It's a pleasure. Glad we made it.
No problem. I just want to share with those who are listening around the world and on the States. Disclaimer: in the States, the new crisis hotline is 988. But wherever you are around the world, I do encourage you to find what resources, because resources are different for every individual out there. I do encourage you to get the knowledge of what may be available, because I always, when I work with my clients in my field, I realize that what helps people is different, and I don't like reinventing the wheel. So whatever is positive, whatever gets you out the door, whatever makes you do what you do, I do encourage that. I always say this, Nicole, is it Nicole Bradford, right? Dr. Nicole
Yes.
Bradford. Yeah.
Yes.
I always say this. People say better than I do. Lao Tzu. I'm
hmm
so bad. He says it this way: new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. What comes to mind when you hear this quote?
Well, for me, I would say that new beginnings, they're difficult at times
Hmm.
because you're kind of stuck in the past, or it's hard to let go of certain things, but you need to start anew. And so I think that's perfect for going into 2023, because there may have been some goals or some aspirations that we weren't able to accomplish in 2022. And so this just gives us a new, fresh perspective that, yes, that's coming to an end, and it's kind of scary as we're moving into the new quarter, but I can push through, I can make it, and it's going to be some positive ahead.
Yeah, and it's also that balance. You don't want to kind of just not remember what happened, what brought you to this new chapter. Sometimes, but you don't want to get stuck there. It's kind of, I don't know, it's tricky. But remembering we have all these things marked in our calendars.
Yes.
Martin Luther King Day is going to be in January. We're
Mhm.
reminded of all the sacrifices he made for the civil rights movement, but also just some reminders of how we treat each other,
Oh,
as
yes.
people. But a lot of these new chapters, I can imagine even back then, or the women's suffrage movement, when they made these big monumental steps to say we want rights, you kind of have to remember the lessons we learned from all that, even
Yes.
today. So I think, yeah, go
I
ahead.
think that's great, and I agree with you, because even for myself, in 2022 and 2019, I actually brought my parents to stay with me here during their last days, and I lost my dad in 2021, but in 2022, it's kind of hard for me because in April I lost my mom. So
Mhm.
moving into 2023 without that support system, without your mom and the individual, especially when you've been in the position to care for someone, it's very difficult because I know that she was sick and she had Parkinson's and dementia. So it's bittersweet, but I know she's in a better place now
Mhm.
and she's in no more pain. So I have to regroup, look at my life, and have a new perspective as I enter this new chapter of my life without her.
Yeah, and a lot of times, with grief or loss, it takes time, and part of the ways you take that time is setting boundaries, saying,
Mhm.
"Hey, I need this time to reflect." Sometimes we're so much in a rush, especially nowadays. We're so
Mhm.
rushed to do something without even remembering the or forethought why we even started this new thing that we're trying to do. So
Exactly.
that is what we're, part of the conversation I wanted to kind of address, but also Albert Einstein says it this way, and I do love how he kind of shares it. He says, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." So, like, if you don't take the time to understand what you were thinking,
Yes.
may have created the problem, or may have made you get, bitter, or family. Right
Mhm.
now, especially when we went through COVID, a lot of times, the we realize that we have no boundary. We have a porous kind of
Yeah.
boundary around us, and we may get, and yeah, we may have disagreements with our families. But it's,
Mhm.
where do we find that balance? Where do we find the set say, "Hey, I appreciate you, but I also need to work on me,"
Exactly.
but also be respectful,
Mhm.
because they have their own context and they may not agree with you, and that's
Mhm.
fine.
That's right.
But at the same time, where does that balance? I think Albert Einstein says in this, and I want to hear your what your take on it is. It's, you need to kind of think of, not have the same perspective, the same problem, and
Mhm.
thinking you're gonna solve it with the same. You kind of have to move through it, and that's basically what I got out. What did you come out of this quote?
I agree with that. It's just looking at your problem or your situation through a different lens because you're
Sure.
always growing, you're always improving, and an approach or a strategy you may have tried may not have been successful or provided the results that you were looking for. So you take a step back and look at the situation with a different set of lens. Maybe you're older now, a little bit wiser, or you're not as frustrated or angry in the situation, so you're able to have a better outcome.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of times, stepping back, a lot of people who are writers, artists, a lot of times they say, "I need to take a break. Let's sit." You write something, you let it sit. You kind of want to come back with fresher eyes. I do totally agree with that.
Mhm.
Even when I was in the military, I worked on aircraft. There were times when things were just not putting together real well, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, if I could sit there 5 hours frustrated, or I could step back and kind of what didn't work, what did work, and then move forward in that way. Dr. Nicole Bradford, I always like new guests to have that opportunity to share a little bit about themselves to those who are listening. What brought you to where you're at? I know you mentioned some, you losing your father and your mother, but
Mhm.
besides that, what, um just anything that you feel comfortable sharing, I'd like to give this opportunity for you to do so. So.
Well, for me, I'm originally from Austin, Texas. I
Mhm.
am the youngest of six kids. My parents had five girls and one boy.
Mm.
And so growing up, it was a little bit challenging in my household. I had to witness domestic violence. I did have family members that were involved with, drugs, either selling or the use of drugs. And it was very challenging growing up. And so I was a first generation college graduate. And so, being even that situation put some strain on the relationship with my siblings because, of course, internally they were looking at me like, well, she went to school and I didn't, but it wasn't a matter of that. It was
Mm.
just that, we're all just trying to do the best that we can with our life and our situation. And from there, I went into the married world, and we know sometimes you may have some issues with in-laws and their expectations that comes
Mm.
along with the new families coming together, and then transitioning into the work world. I've been a teacher, I've been an assistant principal, a principal, and I've also been a professor, and my last position, vice president of student services on the college campus. So, what brought me to the point here in my life is that I created Maintain the Flame. And it's a company where I encourage people to tap into their younger self. Because when we were younger, we had the zest for life, we were excited, we would have fun. We didn't worry much about who was looking or what they thought about us. We just wanted to live life and have fun. But
Mm.
then as we transition into the adult world, we tend to kind of look at things and sometimes we'll conform. And
Mm.
even though it may say that, you're in the world, but you're not of the world,
Mm.
we tend to do what's important to other people. We just want to fit in.
Mhm.
And I always say we're just little kids in big bodies
Mm.
because the same issues we had in our youth, we
Mm.
carry with it in our adult life. And so my goal is to go around and speak and present and encourage people to tap in and maintain their flame for life. That zest and that excitement that you had when you were younger, don't allow your flame to go out, or don't suppress your flame based on who you're around, but be who you are authentically created to be. Be happy, be excited, and enjoy your life and design the life that you desire.
That's for me. When I was hearing you share that, I just remember this one speaker. I forget who it was. He was mentioned, when we're kids, you ask a group of kids who's the best singer, everyone will raise their hand. Who's the best dancer? Something happens in middle school. I don't know what
Yeah,
something
exactly.
something happens, but I do appreciate that because a lot of times, a lot of things we struggle with, even as adults, if we kind of strip through it all, when we peel the onion or we get to the derivative, it's pretty simple. I feel I'm not appreciated.
Mhm,
I don't feel I belong. So there's this impulsivity that you're
mhm,
mentioning. We do things, and like I mentioned before, we're really busy at stuff we don't even know why we're busy. We don't ask the question why we're even doing what we're doing. And being, uh, you know, Revive Ministries is does not proselytize, but obviously I have roots in the faith-based community. And one thing I
mhm,
noticed in the faith-based community that scares a lot of people is asking why are you even there? Why do you go to church? It's a
exactly.
scary question, but I
Mhm,
think it's one that needs to be asked, not just kind of I'm doing it because I always did it, but why? Why? Why do it? And
mhm.
I feel like it shouldn't be a scary thing because then you start asking more deeper questions about yourself and what's
That's right.
important, what's valuable to you. And I think one thing I really strip through that, Nicole said, Sobon says sometimes the hardest part isn't letting go, but rather learning to start over.
Mhm,
Starting over, it won't be as scary if you kind of understand what didn't work and what you would like to see change. But
mhm.
when you're like, oh, I got to start over, and you're still in that kind of same perspective as Albert Einstein, it's scary. It's like, okay, I
Yes.
have to build up all my likes, I have to build
Mhm,
up all my followers. No, it's really what is really important to you, and I feel it's inspiring when people just, sometimes we make it so complicated when it comes
mhm.
to how what we want, but at the very base level, we want to be happy. We want to have the people around us, and especially when we come to mental health or when people are struggling in crisis. The problems may be difficult and complicated, but the reasons why we do it are not. We do it
Yes.
for our families, we do it for friends, whatever it
Mhm.
may be. I want to ask you, switching gears, why do you feel sometimes it's hard for us to start over, even well, I guess I kind of wrote this wrong, but when it's even though we know it's unhealthy, even though we know it's negative, why did we get stuck? Basically, is my question. Why do you think that happens?
Well, I think because we just freeze with fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's something. It's the unknown. You're going to an unknown area, and you're terrified. What if this happens? What if it goes wrong? And it kind of goes back to the statement that you made. We may have several goals in our lives for ourselves, but what if no one buys my product? What
Mm-hmm.
if no one follows me? Well, I always use the analogy. When you think about it, you go into the grocery store and you walk through the potato chip aisle. There's not just one bag of potato chips just sitting there.
Yeah.
So if that person was terrified, or that company that, oh my goodness, their other competition, there are several bags of potato chips out there. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have an idea, it's okay to pursue that. But I think a lot of us get crippled with fear, so we won't move beyond that relationship. Because what if no one else will love me because I have children, or no one else is going to like my personality, or even at work? We're
Mm-hmm.
afraid because we don't want to be the person that rocks the boat, or I may lose or leave this job and go to another job. It's just being able to overcome that fear. And the best way to do that is just one step at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
that leads into my book that I recently wrote. It's just one step is all that it takes. And
Mm-hmm.
because if you just take one step, as small as it might be, if you try to do that every day, eventually you're going to build up the momentum that you need to go towards your dream. But you have to have the courage to move forward and not be paralyzed with fear.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And also the idea that sometimes we just have to define things around us, what they
Mhm.
are, when it comes to, um, work per se. Work, it's going to sound weird, but work is work. Sometimes we get stuck on the idealistic efforts that we want to help people. At the end of the day, I know working in the mental health field, I always say to myself, I'll try. A lot of times I see my limitations of how much I can do, but
Yes.
I also realize that, in a strange way, that it's when it comes to my ability, even my worst day. A lot of times, the people I work with, their worst day, my worst day is nothing compared to what they're going through.
Correct.
So it's perspective. So it's, a lot of times we say client center. We're talking about the person first, not about us. But it's hard to put ourselves to that level if we're not even taking care of ourselves, or
Mhm.
kind of understanding that I'm not Superman, and this is still work. I'm still trying, and I need the people around me who I work with to help me, because I have strengths, I have weaknesses. I'm not awesome sauce all the time, and there's times when I need help, and it's
Yes.
okay to ask for help. What habits have you seen has been helpful in regards to the idea of this month's theme, starting a new chapter, and what has not been helpful from your own experience and what you've
What
seen?
has not been helpful?
Both
I
of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
both of them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with what I believe has been very helpful. And I think it comes from, I just take it from the word maintain the flame. It's just the beginning, maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that you have a positive mindset, because we know how powerful our mind is. It keeps the good and the bad. And we have to fight through that to find the good in every situation. So make sure that you're keeping positive thoughts and you're encouraging yourself. Also, what helps is to take action. Even if it's just setting one goal a day that's going to push you towards the goals that you have set for your life. But do something for yourself or your goals, one step, which be taking action. The next one would be having intentional relationships, making sure that you identify individuals around you that's going to support you, love on you, give you that positive feedback, because we all have something to say about every situation that we observe. Everyone can give you all the feedback in the world. Oh, it's not that bad, and you should just shake it off. But making sure that you're intentional to find those positive relationships. And then the last one I would say is in nurturing yourself. Make sure you take time to take care of your mental health. If it's setting a goal that I'm going to walk today or I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to eat healthy today, but make sure that you're nurturing yourself. What's not helpful is holding on to the past,
Mm-hmm.
holding on to the past and not being able to move forward. Another
Mm-hmm.
one that's not helpful is not being able to forgive and move forward. And I'm not just saying the individuals that are around you, but forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're harder on ourselves than everyone else around us. So taking time to say, okay, I am a parent, I do work, and I do have to drop my kids off at daycare, but it's okay. Or
Mm-hmm.
I am working and I am taking care of my parents or someone that's ill, but it's okay for me to take a time out to go get me a bite to eat or to go for a walk. But making sure that you forgive others, but most importantly, forgive yourself and let go of that fear and move forward in a positive direction.
I really appreciate you mentioning the fear aspect, but also the idea that I've been saying accountability is only a bad word when it's not a safe place. When you provide a safe place, it's not a bad word. You kind of work towards something, and a lot of these top things we're talking about
Mhm.
are is self discovery. We're discovering this, And if we're really being honest, these problems or these areas that we're trying to improve on have been there for a while. So how are we gonna fix it in one day? We gotta have this unrealistic expectations. Give yourself grace. It's gonna take time. Adjustment. I like how you said the change is inevitable. And I want one thing also you said was in being intentional relationships. One thing I learned is friendships change, and that's okay. It's okay. We kind of get stuck, but if you're really being honest, how many elementary school classmates do you talk to?
Exactly.
They change. Even though your college friends change, the friends you had 5 years ago. It's not that I feel ill or anything negative. It's just desires, perspectives, goals, values change. But I still wish them the best. I hope they do wonderful. It's just it's just the natural progression of friendship. But at the same time, give yourself grace. It's not your fault that the friendship's not thriving. But it may just mean that you're in a different chapter per se of your journey. My wife has this book. It's untranslatable words. I'm gonna really mess up how you say this, but it's in Greek. Meraki. I guess it says. The definition is pouring yourself wholeheartedly into something and doing it with doing so with soul, creativity, and love. They say this old expression: be specialized. Be the greatest thing. Be good at one thing. That's it. Like focus on one thing.
Right.
You either that or you're jack of all trades, master of none. That's the whole thing. Like really, just be good at one thing. I remember. I'm paraphrasing a quote from Martin Luther King. If you're a sweeper, be the best sweeper there is. Whatever it is that you're. And I feel that when we specialize, it humbles ourselves. We're not great at everything, but we're trying to improve. And if we have, like you mentioned, realistic goals, but also grace and forgiveness for those around us and ourselves.
That's right.
It provides a safe place because then the accountability is not so scary. Then the accountability is like, oh, I ate a cheeseburger. I wanted to lose some weight, but I was hungry. But hey, let me try to be better next time. That's
exactly.
it. Those are kind of things we used to kind of be more forgiving of ourselves when we're younger. We're like, oh, okay. But now it's just the heavy burden, the unrealistic, I think, urgency of how quick results are. But the result is that you're doing it, that you chose to do it, and you're going through those little steps, like you said. I want to ask you, what has been a drive and motivation for you to get up and keep doing what you're doing today?
Well, I just take time to kind of look at where we are currently in our society. Always, I've been very blessed to have several titles in my career and in my life, but my number one title is mom. And I take great pride in that. And so that keeps me going. My three amazing children. My daughter is a graduate of Hampton University. She's a teacher. My son's a junior at Angelo State, and my baby is a sophomore at UNT. And so my family life keeps me going, and my husband's very supportive. But other than that, seeing the state of the world where everyone has so much stress and anxiety, and people are just being torn and not truly being who they want to be. And so that's what keeps me inspired and keeps me going, because I try to use my life and my experiences as an examples for others. And I know a lot of people say, well, adults, when my kids were little, one of their friends would always say, adults are not supposed to act like that. Well, adults are if they're enjoying life. And so I try to live life out loud, and I try to encourage and inspire others to do the same. So that's what keeps me going, is being able to connect with other individuals, to motivate them, to encourage them to keep going despite what may be going on around them.
That's wonderful. I just want to ask you one last question before final thoughts. What's the biggest lesson you think you learned or that you remember at this moment? Because there's a lot of lessons I'm sure we all could mention, but just what sticks out to you? What's the biggest lesson you would like to share with those listening right now?
Well, the biggest lesson I think I've learned comes from my father. He was also an entrepreneur. He had very humble beginnings, but my parents were very successful later in life. And he always said, Nicole, all it takes is one yes. And so just keep pushing. You may get discouraged, you may get knocked down. People may say that's crazy. Why would we believe in that? But as long as you believe in yourself, you
Mm.
have all the energy that you need to keep pushing ahead. And remember, all it takes is one yes to make your dream a reality.
And I feel along with that, it's also just, you mentioned the persistency, but also the connection. It feels like, from what you're saying, also that you put a lot of weight in how you communicate with others, and that in itself is inspiring. A lot of times when you go to a restaurant and everyone's on their phone,
Yes.
and they're not, it's like a family reunion that
Uh-huh.
could be done on the phone. No
Exactly.
offense. But it's disheartening, but it's
Mhm.
nice to see the people inspiring to communicate better. I think George Bernard Shaw said the illusion of communication is that it actually happened. We're not present enough. A lot of
Exactly.
people like to text.
Mhm.
Texting's great for certain messages that are, a lot of times there's a lot of fluff. You don't have the time to say, I need to change the time for this or that. But
Yes,
deeper conversations don't do well in text. I'm sorry. It just
I
doesn't.
agree.
So I do encourage those, and I'm inspired when I hear my guests say that they're in a, not directly, but you inspire them to communicate better around you with everyone around you and inspire them through that. And I just yeah, that's great. I just want to ask you as we wrap up, all before you share your final thoughts, all those who are listening, her book and all her information that she's doing will be in the notes of this episode, so you could find out what Dr. Nicole Bradford is doing. Any final thoughts you want to share with those listening?
My final thoughts are, as you go into the new year, make sure that you take care of yourself and your loved ones, but most importantly, be kind, because you never know what someone else is going through.
I fervently agree. A lot of us sometimes, our world is too small. There's so
Yes,
much going on out there, and a lot of times, as much grace as you try to give yourself, give it to those who you may not understand or agree
hmm,
with. There's a lot of context that you don't understand. Uh,
exactly.
thank you so much, Nicole Bradford, for just being part of the discussion. Revive Ministry really inspires the idea of continuing the dialogue. I'm hoping this continues on. I told my wife when we got married, I'm going to do this till I'm 80 until I'm. So I just love
Right.
connecting with others and just continue the dialogue. It's not that I have all the answers, but I just
Mhm.
love hearing other people's stories, because stories are one of the most effective ways to communicate. So thank you so much for being part of that
Thank you for the
discussion.
opportunity. I truly enjoyed it.
No problem. I want to share with those who are listening. Remember, stay updated with ReviveMinistryFL.com on the website. This is goodbye for now from Revive Ministry Podcast. Leaving with this last quote. It's from one of my favorite authors from Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald. He says, "It's not merely enough to have the ability to be persistent. You must also have the ability to start over."